So I'm now all the way to rubber band ball part 48. I dumped out 5 5-pound bags of rubber bands and got to placing with some help because this was going to take a long time alone and this was a lot of bands. We kept placing and eventually had all the blue paint covered, and then eventually we got tired and took a break and then came back and finished off the entire pile until there was no bands left. Put it on the scale and it weighed in at almost 240 pounds. And it takes 2 people to pick it up. Like if I should keep on adding bands to it. So I'm now to rubber band ball part 49 and I have 25 pounds of rubber bands again. I dumped out the whole pile and when we began placing for a long time, as you can tell by the clouds going by in the background, this took forever. But eventually, we got the entire pile done. And the ball is completely massive. I weighed it in at 263 pounds. And look at me sitting on it and then falling. And we can barely pick it up together. Like if you want me to keep on adding bands. So I'm now all the way to rubber band ball part 50, which is literally insane. So I'm just going to place another pile and see how heavy I can get it. Right now it's at like 260 pounds. We placed for a long time, which was getting kind of exhausting. And be sure to comment any ideas you have for this rubber band ball now, because it's getting pretty heavy to do anything with. But we finished and we weighed it in at 287 pounds. The camera just doesn't do it justice. And then it fell on me and I exaggerated the fall, but then it actually hurt my foot. Like if you want me to keep going. So I'm now to rubber band ball part 51 and it is huge. I didn't get quite as many rubber bands this time though because there was a delay in shipping this week. But the ball's close to 300 pounds now and I want to get it there. I placed this entire pile all the way until my phone died and stopped recording. But I still finished the ball and tried to weigh it, but the scale was being weird and wouldn't tell me any accurate numbers that made any sense. But I'm assuming it's close to 300 pounds. And the ball almost tried to roll into a car. Like if I should keep going. So it's now the 1-year anniversary of me starting the giant rubber band ball from an exploding watermelon. And ever since then, you guys have kept wanting me to add bands, so I have, all the way to now, which is part 52. I also bought a new scale to weigh the ball and a watermelon to crush at the end of this video with the rubber band ball. The ball currently weighs around 300 pounds, and this is like 25 pounds more of rubber bands we're adding. And the camera did keep cutting out at times due to the heat, but we kept on placing bands until the entire pile was gone. And we tried to weigh it, and we couldn't quite tell, but we think it was like 320, and we tried to pick it up, but we couldn't, so we had to roll it onto the watermelon and completely crushed it. But it was pretty good. Like if you want me to keep on adding bands. One day on part 53 of my giant rubber band ball series, I thought it was like any other rubber band ball video, placing a bunch of bands, but the clouds began to move in. After a while of placing rubber bands, it began to pour. And the rain just kept coming down harder and harder, so I got the beanbag to safety and then had to come back for the rubber band ball. Pushed that over 300-pound rubber band ball through the rain and into the garage, and then went back, making 2 trips to get all the rubber bands to place it in the garage. I shut the garage door, dried off the rubber band ball, and we got to work placing all the rest of the bands until we are eventually done. And the ball now should weigh like 347 pounds, like if I should keep on going. So one day on rubber band ball part 54, I loaded up the giant rubber band ball with my brother and we drove it out to a warehouse where I would store it. I let the rubber band ball out and stopped it, and this is its new home. And then I dumped out a bunch more bands to begin working on it that night. And my friend and I got busy placing as many bands as possible as the night began to get darker. Now I'm in the process of getting another scale for this thing so I can get the exact weight perfectly. But it's massive and weighs around 370 pounds. I rolled it around, ran with it, and then rolled it back. Like if you want me to keep on adding bands. So this is rubber band ball part 55 and I dumped out another 25 pounds of rubber bands and started placing. And I actually have a new scale on the way. It can read all the way up to 1,000 pounds, and I think the ball will be 400 pounds after I'm done with this pile, but we'll have to test it when the scale gets here. I launched some of these bands and then I compared the ball next to me, and it's completely massive and there's no chance I can pick it up anymore. But it's way easier to stand on than ever before, and I can even like flip off it. This ball is just completely crazy, so like if you want me to take it to 1,000 pounds. So it's now rubber band ball part 56. And I bought a 1,000-pound scale to weigh it, and it weighs in at 396 pounds, but we gotta get it to 1,000. So my friend and I began placing a giant pile of bands for what felt like an eternity, and it got dark and we kept on placing until we were completely out. And now we gotta weigh it, but first I wanted to test standing on it, so I ran on it like a barrel, then I did that, then stood on it, and then fell again. And here it is next to my head. Then I put it back on the scale and it weighed in at 422, then 428. So I don't know, but like if I should keep on adding bands. So I can't believe this ball's still going, but I'm at rubber band ball part 57 and I weigh it in at 422 pounds, but I'm going to keep on adding bands and make it even bigger. And a lot of people wonder why I wear gloves, and it's because if I don't, the bands will rub against my hand and create blisters. And I kept on placing bands until we were completely out, and look at it. It's huge. I can stand on it with ease now, but not pick it up. And it's tall enough to use as a platform to fall off of and flip. Then I tried to do like this rolling trick shot and just fell on my butt. But I did make this dunk off of it and this basket. And it was finally time to weigh it in at 447 pounds. It is massive, like if I should keep going. So it's another week and I'm on to rubber band ball part
58, and I weighed it in at 446 pounds, and then I had to keep on adding more. I dumped out a whole nother box of bands and got to work. And I kept on placing for about an eternity and ran through multiple pairs of gloves, but eventually we made it. This thing is now so big, the camera just doesn't justify how big it is. I was going to do a backflip, but ended up just doing that, and then I rolled it over the trampoline, fell off of it. Here's just a quick size comparison next to a ball pit ball. Then I put it on the scale, zeroed it out, and it weighed in at 472 pounds. So like this video if you want me to continue building it. So I'm now to rubber band ball part 59, and it's almost at 500 pounds. So I got out another box of the 15-inch bands to see if I could get it there. And this was one of the most challenging rubber band ball videos because the bands were super tight and kept breaking, and it was also really hot. So we ended up having to take a day and come back to finish the pile. And while we were placing bands, we talked about how weird it was we were even making this. But it's also super cool. Just look at it here next to me. I measured it 30 inches high and like 98 inches around, and then rolled it. And it almost took some stuff out. Then I tried to make a basket off of it, but failed. Then it was time to see if it was 500 pounds, but it fell 3 pounds short. So then I just rolled it off, like if I should keep on adding bands. I'm now to rubber band ball part 60, and we started off trying to do backflips but failed, so then we weighed it in at 496 pounds. And I used a lot of rubber bands to build this giant rubber band trampoline, but I had enough left over to get it over 500 pounds. We took a little break and then came back, and we finished off the entire pile, and it was done. The bands are now getting really tight in the ball, and look at its size comparison next to a tire. And then I tried to crush this watermelon but missed and crushed the pool instead. Tried to get it out, a lot of water came out, and it wouldn't crush the watermelon, so then I just took it inside, fell on it, and weighed it at 515 pounds. So like if I should take it to 1,000 pounds. So I'm now to rubber band ball part 61, and the ball is over 500 pounds, but I guess everyone wants me to keep on going. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. My friend Brendan and I, we placed bands for a while, then left and came back the next day to place again, and this happened. A band broke and made him launch backwards. So I had to help him back up, and then we got back to placing. And I think this is Brendan's last time placing the rubber bands on the ball. But after way too long, we were done, and the ball is huge, and the bands are way too tight. Just look at me standing on it and then trying to bounce stuff on it. And I finally rolled it back on the scale and weighed it in at 541 pounds. So, like, if you want me to keep on going. So, it's rubber band ball part 62, and I wanted to try something a little bit different this time. I took about 5 pounds of bands and looped them all together like this with the help of my friend, and we had this long strand that we tried to wrap around the ball, but it was kind of hard, so I rolled it, and that was still pretty hard, and the bands kept falling off, but eventually we got it. But we wanted to test if the same amount of bands was better just placing the normal way. And after we placed that pile, we realized it was. So we got out 3 more bags and placed the entire pile. And these videos always take so long to make, so leave a like if you actually want me to keep going and adding onto this ball. It's just huge now. Just look at it again next to a basketball. And then we put it on the scale and weighed it in at 555 pounds. So again, like if I should keep going. So I'm now to rubber band ball part 63, and we built this Lego tower to knock it over with the rubber band ball. He completely knocked it over, and then I weighed the ball in at 555 pounds, and then we got busy placing more bands to make it even heavier. I had a whole box dumped out, and my friend Brendan helped me place all these bands. And to make it go faster, we tried to do 2 and 3 bands at a time. And these are like the max custom length bands I can find, so I don't know what I'm going to do after this, but we were done. And the ball is now at an unreal level of massiveness. It about crushed this fort, then almost hit Brendan, and we weighed it in at 580 pounds, so like if you want me to keep on going. This is rubber band ball part 64, and it can barely fit through a doorway, and here it is next to a tire. I rolled it to the other end of the warehouse and then decided to crush a bunch of poppers with it. Here it goes. And after that, I rolled it onto the scale, breaking this little wood ramp and weighing it in at 585 pounds. And it was now time to get the ball over 600 pounds, so I dumped out a bunch more bands, and then look at this other angle. The ball is huge, and the camera just doesn't do it justice how big it is. And my friend helped me place bands for so long until eventually the pile was out and the ball was done. I rolled it over the beanbag and then used it as like a giant exercise ball that's just huge and weighs like 600 pounds. I crushed this ball pit ball and then pushed it with the hoverboard onto the scale and weighed it at 605 pounds. So like if I should keep on going. So I'm now all the way to part 65 of my giant rubber band ball, and here's a little rubber band ball being thrown on it, and then me pushing it to the scale to weigh it in at 607 pounds. Then we threw down another pile to keep on placing and make it even bigger. And people ask me all the time what my goal is for this ball, and I don't even know. I'm just going to try to get it as big as possible. And it always takes way longer than it looks to place all these bands, but eventually we got it done. I tried to push it with my hoverboard and kind of worked. Then we put it back on the scale and it was like 30 pounds off, so it actually weighs like 634 pounds. So like if you want me to keep on going. So I'm going to rubber band ball part 66, and the ball is huge. Look at me behind it. You can't even see me. And I put it on the scale and it weighs 630 pounds, but we're going to get it even bigger.
and keep on adding bands. And my friend Brennan and I began placing bands for a very long time. And a lot of people say it looks like an egg now and not a ball, but it's very hard to keep it round because it's so big. And we try our best. And after we finished with the pile, I messed around with it, tried to throw balls on it, and then dunked with it. And I compared it next to this tiny rubber band ball and my head, then fell off of it, and took it back on the scale to weigh it in at 655 pounds. So, like if I should keep on going. So I'm now to rubber band ball part 67, and we actually made a couple more tiny rubber band balls. Here they are on a mini trampoline. And the big one was too big for it, so we just put it on the scale and weighed it in at 655 pounds. And now it's time to make it bigger. I dumped out a whole nother pile. Then my friend and I got to placing bands for a really long time. And the bigger this ball gets, the harder it is for it to look bigger. So we got to add a lot of bands every time. And we finished up the pile, and then I wanted to test if it would go through a doorway, and it wouldn't. It's too big now. And I failed trying to get it back on the scale, so we had to both push it on the scale and weigh it in at 679 pounds. So, like, if you want me to keep on going. So one day it was rubber band ball part 68, and the rubber band ball is now almost 700 pounds, but today we're going to get it there. And somebody in the last video commented to get colored rubber bands, so I got these black rubber bands so you can see them placed on the ball. And the cool thing about two different colors is you can see them all going onto the ball. And it took us quite a while, but eventually we got it done. And the ball looks really cool now. It looks kind of three-dimensional. Look at it. The black bands are more sleek than the other ones. And the ball is so massive. Look at it in comparison to my head. Then I zeroed out the scale and put it back on, and it weighed 706 pounds. So, like if I should keep on adding bands. So I'm now to part 69 of my giant rubber band ball, and it's now over 700 pounds, but we're going to get it even bigger. I dumped out 25 pounds of bands to place on the ball, and I started placing with the help of my friend Brendan. And we actually placed 3 bands at once the whole time to make it go by a lot quicker. Until eventually we were done. I stood on it and then tried to walk on it and tried to walk again. It was actually kind of successful. Then I pushed it over here, dropped this ball on it, jumped on it, and then we tried to figure out how to get on the scale and weighed it in at 727 pounds. So, like if you want me to keep on adding bands. So I'm now all the way to rubber band ball part 70. It knocked over all these crates. Then I zeroed out the scale and weighed it in at 730 pounds, and it was time to add a bunch more bands. So my friend Brennan and I got busy placing this entire pile, which took so long, and we ended up taking a break and coming back the next day to finish it. But eventually it was done, and the ball is now even bigger. Look at it next to my head, me jumping on it, then me rolling it to Brendan, him rolling it back even faster, then dunking on it, and we weighed it back in at 755 pounds. So, like if you want me to keep on adding bands. So it's now rubber band ball part 71, and this ball is insanely massive at 750 pounds, but we're going to make it even bigger. And this time half the bands are these half-inch bands that I've never tested before, so we'll see how they go. And the bands were just really tight, so we ended up moving the ball to see if it would make it better, and it did, because none of the bands had been placed on that side that much. And it also helped make the ball more even. But eventually, after a long time, we were done. The ball is huge. Here I am trying to stand on it and walk on it and almost fall. I dropped some Orbeez on it, threw a water balloon at it, and crushed a water balloon, and then weighed it in at 777 pounds. So, like this video if you want me to keep on adding bands. So it's rubber band ball part 72, and the ball's a little messed up from a video that's not out yet, but it still weighs 775 pounds, so we're going to keep on adding bands. And this time I got these special blue bands. And we began fixing up the ball and making it look cooler with these blue bands. And we kept on rotating it, that way the bands would be spread more evenly, and it would be easier to place the bands. And after a very long time, we were done. I about crashed into the wall, then jumped on it, and dropped my phone. Now, this ball is completely insane. Here's next to the little ball next to me, and then I struggled to put it on the scale, but got it and weighed it at over 800 pounds, like if I should keep on going. So it's rubber band ball part 73, and I about knocked over a fan with it and struggled to make it over to the scale, but weighed it in at 800 pounds, but we're going to add even more bands. And the ball still looks kind of broken, so hopefully after we place all these bands, it looks a lot neater. And the ball is finally getting close to 1,000 pounds, which is what the scale maxes out at. And we kept turning the ball to make it as round as possible. And after a long while of placing bands, we were finished. And the ball does look a lot neater. I jumped on it like this. Then it accidentally moved the couch when I was trying to make it over to the scale. Brendan tried pushing it on, but failed alone. So we both had to push it, and it weighed 829 pounds. I then pushed it off and took it outside to show the cows. Yeah, they thought it was pretty cool. Like if I should keep on going. So it's rubber band ball part 74, and the ball won't fit through a doorway. It's over 800 pounds, and it's looking kind of rough, but we're on our way to 1,000 pounds, and we're going to get it there. We dumped out a bunch more bands, and we've been using this same band for a while. They still work on the ball, but we almost need bigger bands. We kept on placing until it was done. And it's actually getting hard to jump on because it's so tall. I pulled a stray band onto it, and then crushed this box, and then pulled it to the scale. And at first, the scale was acting broken, but eventually it weighed in at 842 pounds. So, like if you want me to keep on adding bands. So one day, it was rubber band ball part 75, and I rolled it across the the warehouse and then put it on the scale, and it weighed 842 pounds. We dumped out a whole bunch more rubber bands and got to placing. The ball is really heavy and hard to move around, so we do our best to not place the bands in the same spot and try to keep it as round as possible. We finished the pile, and the camera just doesn't do the ball justice. I've moved it to the distance to kind of get an idea of how big it is, and then I slammed into the ball, dunked on it, totally done, and then tried to move it with the hoverboard, but failed, so I spun around and put it on the scale, but we kind of broke it, and it wouldn't read, but it's probably 870. So it's rubber band ball part 76, and I tried to prove it weighs 870 pounds, but the scale's been broken, probably from the rubber band ball, but we're just going to keep adding bands anyway. We dumped out a huge pile of rubber bands and got to placing. And this really is a lot more work than it looks like, band after band for so long. We flipped it to make it cover the blue side, and then we were done. It looks really good, and it's probably within 5 pounds of 900 pounds. Here I am laying next to it and then jumping on it and trying to run on it. I pushed the ball, tried to get a run, and then fell, and then did it again. Kind of got one. Yeah, pretty cool. Like if I should keep going to 1,000. So it's giant rubber band ball part 77. I saw these little rubber band balls at the store, so I had to buy them all and compare them to my giant 895 pound rubber band ball. Mine was a lot bigger. I opened one up like this and compared it. And yeah, mine was way bigger. We're going to make it even bigger, and I'm hoping in the next month I can get this ball all the way to 1,000 pounds. And we noticed the ball was kind of egg-shaped, and it made it hard to place bands, so we moved it and put wedges down so the ball wouldn't move and placed it like this, and it helped a lot. It really helped round out the ball and make it look a lot better. We placed the final band, and we were done. And the scale still broke, but the ball should be about 920 pounds. So it's giant rubber band ball part 77, and the scale doesn't really work anymore, but it's 920 pounds. We're so close to 1,000 pounds, and we're going to get it there soon. This pile weighs 25 pounds, and we placed the entire thing, which took quite a while, but eventually we were done, and I jumped on it, then sat on it, then laid next to it, and then accidentally rolled it into the bang and drank it anyway, like if I should keep on going. It's now rubber band ball part 78, and the ball is so close to 1,000 pounds. The scales broke, but the ball should be about 945 pounds, and we're placing a bunch more bands. We eventually rolled the ball to a higher point, that way it would be easier to get the bands around the ball. We did this for a while until eventually we were done. This band flew in the sky. The ball should be about 970 pounds, and it's huge. My friend Brendan did this, then I fell off it onto a beanbag, and like if I should keep on going. So I'm now at a rubber band ball part 80, and I'm gonna add all these rubber bands to my 970 pound ball. And after this video, the ball should be within inches of 1,000 pounds. And we don't know for sure the weight because my current scale is broken, but I have a new one that weighs up to 5,000 pounds on the way. Eventually, we finished the pile, and it looked like this. It's insane. I crushed a can, then drank the rest of it, and then here's it next to my head, and here's the broken scale, like if we should keep on going. Now rubber band ball part 81, and I bought this new scale that weighs up to 5,000 pounds. It weighed the ball in at 990 pounds, and today we're going to get it over 1,000 pounds. I also wanted to try some different strategies, these big mover bands and looping these 12-inch bands. I thought looping these 12-inch bands sounded the easiest because you could just loop them together and then wrap them around. We dumped out a bunch of bands like this and then started looping. We looped for a while and decided to go ahead and place one on, and it looked pretty good, so we kept on going until we had the entire pile finished. We ended up with these two giant links of bands. We wrapped one all the way around it, which made me kind of dizzy, and then wrapped the other one until we were done. And the ball looked pretty good. We weighed it in over 1,000 pounds, finally. I was pretty excited. So now we just got to get to the new world record, like if I should keep going. So it's giant rubber band ball part 82, and I got a sample amount of these giant green rubber bands to test them out. They work really well, but for now I only have these rubber bands. The ball's just over 1,000 pounds, and these bands barely work anymore. They're way too tight. We had to prop the ball up as tall as possible to even fit the bands, but after a long time we were done with the entire pile. It's a little wonky, but here it is. Then here's me jumping on it, rolling around a little bit, and jumping off. And it was time to weigh it in. We got it on the scale, and it was going back and forth between 1,020 and 1,040, like if I should keep on going.